Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 322 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by Dexcom, Omnipod, Touched by Type 1, and the Contour Next 1 blood glucose meter. You can find out more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor at dexcom.com/juicebox. Get a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump at myomnipod.com/juicebox. touchedbytype1.org and contournext1.com. Round out the links for today's sponsors. At contournext1.com, you can find out if you're eligible for an absolutely free Contour Next 1 meter. And of course, at touchedbytype1.org, you will find my favorite diabetes organization. And you'll get to see what they're doing for people living with type 1. Today's show brings us another person living with type 1 diabetes who's had the coronavirus. Justin Wilhite became Twitter famous when he tweeted, "I have it. Don't sleep on this thing, people. I'm a very healthy type 1 diabetic. My body is fighting it very well, but it's kicking my ass. Don't be a moron. Stay home." That tweet is accompanied by a photograph of Justin in his hospital bed in a gown with a knit cap on from the Oakland A's. If you're interested in seeing it, it's all over my social media right now. And later in this episode, you're going to find out how many people have seen that tweet. It's a staggering number. Justin recorded this with me just the other day as he's finishing up with his coronavirus experience. This firsthand account of what it's like to have the coronavirus, COVID-19, will fill in a lot of blanks for you. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. For new listeners coming through Justin's social media, I want to say hello and welcome. If any of you have type 1 diabetes or love someone who does, please take a look back through the over 300 shows that are in this podcast. This is the most popular, best reviewed type 1 podcast there is, and there's a very good reason for that. So when you're done here, if you want to hang out, read some reviews, check out some other episodes, I'd really appreciate it. I think you're going to like the show. All right, let's get started. Justin does a fantastic job of telling his story, and I don't want you to have to wait any longer. How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1?
Let's see. Type 1, officially diagnosed at like 28. But my A1C was so high by the time I had some issues. Because at the time I was working out like a maniac.
Okay.
I'd work out in the morning. I'd go to my job, which was labor intensive, and then finish my workout at night. So at the time I was 250 pounds of American muscle.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
Wow. You were strong.
Yeah, I was pretty stout.
Yeah.
And so I went into the gym one day. I was doing some incline dumbbells, working on the chest, and my left arm just gave out on me. And I thought, well, that's weird. So I stood up and shook it off a little bit and started with my workout again, and then my right arm went down on me.
Oh, no kidding.
And yeah, and so that freaked me out. So then I took about a week, and every day I went in, I would do less and less weight, and it didn't make any sense to me. Yeah. So, and I was eating healthy, and, the only bad thing I'd have is, beer and pizza at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I think this was summer 2008.
Okay.
Somewhere thereabouts. So about 12 years. And doctor ran a bunch of tests on me, and they were talking about multiple sclerosis, because I was having nerve pains like all over, neuralgia nerve pains, just down the nerve.
Yeah.
And not like the classic diabetes, kind of dead finger, dead weight kind of neuropathy.
Yeah, and that neuropathy would only come after years of mismanagement. It's not going to happen on day one. So,
well, absolutely. Right. And so when after he finally came down to, he said, "I think you're diabetic." He's like, I've been talking to all the docs here, and we're going to try one more thing. And after that, I'm going to have to send you to some sort of specialist. Mm-hmm. And so did the A1C. It came back. I was 15.1 on my A1C. So he said, 1, I don't know how you're not in a coma. 2, I'm not sure how you're not dead. He's all, thank God you work out as much as you do, because I think this would have been, you would have died a long time ago. And so he was thinking, like, you were diabetic for probably years. So I was 27 when I was diagnosed. And he was thinking probably about 25 or something. Something screwy started happening with me.
In hindsight, were you ever able to look back and say, oh, I remember this or that, or did it never kind of materialize?
The only thing was the nerves. Every once in a while, I'd get a nerve pain in my leg or my hand or something like that. But I was constantly drinking water. I was constantly eating. I was constantly supplementing and working out.
So a lot of the signs would be masked by the life you were living.
100%. And so I didn't pay any attention to it because I thought, I'm fine. Because my mother was type 1 diabetic, and then my aunts were type 1 diabetic. And, it just goes back, forever. Yeah. But so far I was good by 27. And then, then it just went downhill from there in terms of diabetes.
At that age, was the idea like, I'm 27, like I'm not getting it now? Because if your mom had it and your grandmother had it, you felt like you crossed some sort of a goal line, right? You didn't have to look back for that.
100%.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm 27. I work out like a maniac. I don't have any of the symptoms. And any time that I would do a blood sugar, I'd be okay.
Right.
And, just for, S's and G's or whatever.
Right.
And so I didn't even think nothing about it. And that's why the doctor, that was the last test he did, was the A1C.
The easiest one.
The easiest one, absolutely. I did a nerve conduction study. I did, like an MS study. I did like a CT scan because they were worried about all sorts of, nerve and body degeneration diseases.
After all the other things that they were looking for, did diabetes seem like good news?
Diabetes was confusing because it just didn't make any sense. Like I said, I was working out, and then at my job, I would hustle and do stuff. And so, it was a labor intensive job, and I was constantly moving. So
you're working out a lot, constantly moving at your job. So eating a lot makes sense. You drink a lot. So peeing a lot makes sense. Like there's a way
absolutely.
to live. Yeah. Well, that's
absolutely
good. That's good for parents to hear of younger kids who are diagnosed, because they're always hard on themselves for missing signs, but it's easy.
It's hard, especially with like in kids, because they're constantly hungry. They're constantly thirsty. They always want a nighttime glass of water. It doesn't matter how old they are. They just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Will it ever buy you 5 more minutes, right? It's not going to sleep.
Exactly. You're like, just give me 5 minutes. I want to finish the show.
Yeah. I need water. I can't go to sleep yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're diagnosed 12 years ago, how do you start managing? Is it injections, pens? What did they do for you?
Oh, it was, they started with like, pills and stuff, metformin and something else. And the only thing that did was take everything away from me that I had worked so hard for like 5 years.
Did they think you were type 2?
Well, they did, but and I told them, I was like, this doesn't make any sense, fellas, because none of this is working. And they were like, yeah, you should have lost, better blood sugars. I lost a ton of weight, because I guess that's what it's supposed to do. And then, it took all my muscle from me and everything. And then, then they got me on insulin, and instantly everything went away.
Yeah, of course. And even the family history didn't clue them in.
See, and that's what I thought too.
Right.
But, like you said, it sometimes the obvious isn't the obvious. You know what I mean? It's the last thing everybody looks for.
Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting. Listen, I'd be lying if I said you were the first person to come on and say something similar. There's very few people who come on and are like, hey, I went into an office, a doctor looked at me and said, boom, you've got type 1 diabetes.
You've got type 1 diabetes. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because there's always that like, oh, you're in good shape. You're too old. All the things that aren't, they're not 100%.
Real. 100%.
Yeah. But
it's funny because I went home later that night, and then Oh, there's an actress. She has red hair. The juvenile diabetes lady. She's all, whether you're 3 or 33. And I'm like, well, I'm 27.
I fit right in the...
What's that?
Listen, I've interviewed people who have been diagnosed at 60.
Oh, wow.
So, man, I think that because people used to call it juvenile diabetes, it was in people's head. Like, you don't get that after you're 18,
Exactly. It's stuck in your head. You got to be a kid.
Yeah.
You can be an adult and still get it.
Yeah. So, okay. So you, now I'm interested, before we get to why you're here, did you look to your mother for management once you knew you were type 1, or did she feel like she was from a different era? Like, how do you make the decision about where to get that information?
My life has been kind of, if you look at it on paper, it's been kind of sad, but I grew up a foster kid.
Okay.
So I didn't have access to my mother or anybody else in my family. So I was kind of on an island by myself on this one.
Huh. Well, I guess then the idea of, there being karma and scores in the world and people being owed things probably is not real, because when we get to the rest of what we're going to talk about, you'd think the foster kid thing would have paid you up. But
no, not yet. Almost though.
You're getting closer. So what is your situation now? Are you married? Do you have kids? Are you single?
Absolutely. I've been married since September 2000. Same person, if you can believe that.
Congratulations.
And we have 3 kids, 17, 12, and 9.
Wow. Any of those kids type 1?
Luckily, no one thus far. We have one kid who has vitiligo. But other than that, nothing serious with anybody's health.
Is vitiligo also autoimmune?
It is. And that's why we're watching that one, just, to be on the safe side.
Yeah, I think that you'll see autoimmune problems run in families, and they don't always pop up as the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of like autoimmune diseases anybody can have, and I'd rather him have vitiligo than diabetes. That's for sure.
Hey, no kidding. I've never put them in order, but I guarantee that would come up on my list prior.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you get little white patches. Yeah. Oh, all right, cool.
I'll take it.
Exactly.
So do you pump now, or are you MDI? How do you manage now?
No, I do everything manually on my own. I don't want anything attached to me at all. It's just I'm weird and quirky like that. So I do everything. I do finger stick. I do my middle finger on my left hand, and that's the only finger I pick. Mm-hmm. And then I give myself injections with syringes.
How is it working out for you? I mean, obviously you like it for your lifestyle. Does it work well for your health?
Yeah. 100%. Like my A1C is almost down to quote unquote normal people's A1C.
Good for you. In the 5s?
Yeah, damn near. I was 5'7" at one point. I was 6'1" the last time I went to the doctor. So
wow, very well done. That's excellent.
Yeah, my overall goal is to try to quote unquote be normal. But anytime I get close to there, I'm more jittery than I like to be.
When you get lowered, because you feel like you don't want to get too low, is that the concern?
Yeah, it's the feeling of like not having enough blood sugar. That weird jittery kind of. You could tell you're on the cusp of having a low blood sugar, but you're still quote unquote perfect. If that makes sense. Gotcha.
Have you looked at? Well, I guess you don't want anything connected. I was going to ask if you had looked at a CGM, but you're not interested in being connected.
No, I'm not interested in anything like that.
Hey, listen, you're doing great.
My dogs are interested.
Bring them over here. I'll tell them about a continuous glucose monitor. So
nope. I like doing everything kind of on my own, being in charge of what I got going on, and not having to worry about something malfunctioning or getting something replaced or replanted. And
no, man, I think if it works for you, I think it's beautiful.
Well, and plus, when you have like a alone time, you don't want like a machine being in the way. You know what I mean?
There's an episode that just went up last week that was all about the female perspective of having sex with type 1. And there's a guy that already came on and recorded his going up soon. So I think I do know what you mean, because I've just had someone explain it to me.
Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah, and that was offered to me early on, but I was like, where does it have to be? They're like, here. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'll just give myself a shot.
I'm using that spot for something else. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Justin, you don't have to, obviously I'm not asking you exactly where, but about where in the country do you live?
Oh, I live in, the world knows where I live now. Rancho Cordova, California, which is about 15 miles east of Sacramento.
All right. And today, I don't usually timestamp these, but around this coronavirus, I am. Today's April 4th. When did you find out you had corona?
It was March 16th.
Okay. So not a couple and a half. Let me think. I'm going to do the math.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, but I started having symptoms March 4th.
Okay.
So there was some time in between before like an official diagnosis was made.
Gotcha. So
hey, I'll go in the room.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
This dog's love
because
you.
now the dog, they love me, and they're going to bark at the wind, and it's a nice stormy day today. Okay, so now I'm in the room.
You're good.
Good to go.
So March 4th, you start feeling it. You find out on the, what'd you say? I'm sorry, the 14th? The 16th?
Yeah, March 16th.
March 16th. Okay, so you think you had it probably 10 days before you were tested. So tell me about those first 10 days. How did that go, and how did it lead you to getting tested?
Well, a few days before March 4th, I started getting winded walking around, and I just felt tired.
Okay.
So, let's see, going back in my timeline, let's see, March 4th is when I got symptoms. So March 4th is when I started getting symptoms. Between March 4th and March 11th, I started progressively getting worse. And it started with a headache, and all around the headache. So picture your entire head hurting. So it's a strange headache. And then later that night, I could feel my lungs, and that was a strange sensation. And the discomfort for up until the 11th was about an inch and a half strip from nipple to nipple, which, if you know anatomically, that's going to be your pulmonary artery, your pulmonary veins, and like the bronchial tube area for your lungs. And this went on for days, and it got progressively worse. It hurt more. And then by the 11th, it started spreading with my lungs. Went to the emergency room on the 13th, and it was my entire lungs. And then fast forward a few days later, March 16th, it was the entire lung, front, back, up, down, and extremely painful to inhale and exhale. Nothing I could do relieved any pain, whether it was the headache or whether it was the lung aches. It was constant. It didn't matter what I did. Sit down, lay down, stand up, walk.
There was no
nothing
good way
really.
to be. Yeah.
No. Nothing?
What about the headache? Pressure, sharp? Like, did it affect your vision? It
is almost migraine-like without the aura and without the one side that migraines get. Okay. It was along the pain of a migraine, but your entire head.
Wow.
So neck, back of the head, temples, top of the head, forehead, and just nothing alleviates it.
How long did that last?
That was for a solid 29 days.
Oh, geez. Okay. Did you get accustomed to it at any point, or was it constantly painful?
Constantly painful. Constantly painful, and you just expect it to be there, and it's just there.
Wow.
Same thing with the lung pain. And the other symptom is shortness of breath, getting up and walking 10 feet to the bathroom. That's probably the worst thing, and the thing that hangs on the most is the shortness of breath.
Would you say, I mean, has someone characterized would they score the level of, like, was it obviously not mild? What did they call it once they told you had it?
So what I've read is they categorize it in, obviously asymptomatic, which is nothing. You're a carrier of it. Mild, moderate, dangerous, and critical. Mm-hmm. And so I would have been in the moderate category, right before dangerous, and obviously not critical, because critical patients get intubated.
And did you ever get close to that, to your feet?
No, luckily, all of my vitals were good, and my oxygen level throughout my body, the lowest it ever dipped was 96. But it stayed stable My blood pressure stayed stable. The only thing that was raised was my pulse, and that would be between 100 and 125 beats per minute sitting.
Wow.
And so it constantly felt like I was running.
Because of the shortness of breath, you think?
Just the disease. For whatever reason, it really amps up your heart. While your blood might be saturated with oxygen, for whatever reason, the heart is pumping like there isn't enough. So it's just this whole disease is a mystery.
All you need to do to try the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump is go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. And there you'll be able to get a absolutely free, no obligation demo of the Omnipod sent directly to you. I'm telling you, it takes mere moments to fill out the form. And the next thing you know, your Omnipod is going to be flying through the mail right to your home. When it gets there, you'll be able to put the pump on, to wear it, and see what you think. You'll be able to sleep with it, bathe with it, and other activities, while you're walking around your house, quarantined for the COVID-19 disaster. Anyway, get outside, go for a run, go for a walk the dog, dust up high, vacuum under the carpet. You can't vacuum under the carpet. Vacuum under the, what is that thing? The sofa. Vacuum under the sofa. Really give that pump a workout and see what it would be like to wear it every day. I think you're going to find that once you put the Omnipod on, you don't even realize it's there anymore. And once you've come to that conclusion for yourself, you'll be able to get back in touch with Omnipod and get your order started. My daughter has been using the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump since she was 4 years old, and she'll be 16 this summer. It is an indispensable part of how we manage Arden's type 1 diabetes. Arden's A1C has been between 5.2 and 6.2 for over 5 years, almost 6 years now. The Omnipod, coupled with her Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, is how we make that happen. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Scott, why don't you tell me about that Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor is FDA approved for 0 finger sticks. That means you can wear this monitor and see your blood sugar, not just the number, but the direction and speed that it's moving in real time, constantly, right there on your iPhone or Android device. There's even a receiver if you don't want to use the phone to see your numbers. You know what else the G6 does? It allows the wearer to share their information with loved ones. Imagine your sister in Calabasas or your child up the street at school. They have type 1 diabetes and you're following them right there on your phone. I can open my phone up right now and see what my daughter's blood sugar is. 74. That easy. I actually just did that. I picked up my phone and told you my daughter's blood sugar in real time. Her blood sugar is stable. It is neither climbing nor falling right now. And you could know that for the people in your life. Dexcom.com/juicebox. What I just said is the mere tip of the iceberg of reasons why you would want a Dexcom CGM. We make all kinds of advanced dosing decisions with the information that comes back from Arden's Dexcom, and you could too. Again, I'll say this. A1C between 5.2 and 6.2 for almost 6 years. Here's the other part I didn't tell you earlier. 0 diet restrictions. Arden eats whatever she wants. The links for the advertisers are also available at juiceboxpodcast.com and in the show notes of the podcast player you're using right now. Arden's results are her own, and yours may vary. That's it for the ads today, and there's a lot of show left. You and I are actually talking. This is the 4th. So from when you kind of felt it till now is a solid month.
100%.
Yeah.
I probably stopped having symptoms a day or two ago. And today I've been calling it my recovery on Twitter. So I'm probably day 7 from feeling okay, and probably like day 2 of not feeling anything.
Okay. Let me go back for a minute. And you said something. Sure. I want to see if you can put more words to. You could feel your lungs.
Absolutely.
I don't know what that means. I don't know how to can you?
And neither did I at first. Okay. It was the strangest feeling because, you look at your arm, you see your arm, but you don't feel your arm. Mm-hmm. It's just there, just like your lungs. And the only thing I can liken it to, once the pain progressed, if you've ever had pneumonia, or if you've ever gone outside when it's really cold and take a deep breath really fast, and that cold that's in your lungs, that hurts before your body warms it up.
Right.
That is what the pain is like, but doubled or tripled, and with every inhale and every exhale.
So when you're feeling like that, what do you do? Was there any comfort? Did you sleep, lay down? There was nothing?
There was no comfort. Sleep was hard to get because I'd be woken up every 2 to 3 hours, hurting, basically to breathe. And I snore. I snore like a freight train.
Right.
And I tell my family it's because I'm scaring the bears away. And they said, "But you're so loud." I'm like, "Do you see any bears?"
There's never been a bear in the house. I'm helping.
That's right. And I said, "You're goddamn welcome."
You have no idea what Daddy's doing to protect us. I've got a lot of jobs.
100%. So I'm protecting everyone from the bears. So the entire time I had this, because I never got to sleep very deeply, I didn't snore hardly once.
You probably weren't inhaling very deeply, I would imagine, right?
I probably wasn't. Yeah, I probably wasn't, because just, how your body just kind of slows down as you sleep. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until the first 24 hours of taking prednisone where I slept for a solid 12 hours had I had any real sleep, and I snored that night. So she knew that something good was happening because I was snoring.
Well, between the time that you feel like you were sick and you get it tested, I'm looking at the calendar and I'm remembering where I was. This was the ramp up to this. It was just starting to be talked about, like mainstream news. At what point did you think, I've got that thing they're talking about on TV?
About a week before, because everything was blooming at the time. Okay. And so every year these trees bloom and it messes my head up and I feel terrible, and then everything stops blooming and I'm fine. So for about 3 to 5 days, that's what I thought was going on.
Okay.
And then I started getting winded walking up our steps because we live in an apartment. And so by the 4th, I woke up with a headache, and I thought, well, that's terrible. And so I, still thinking it's allergies. And then by the 11th, I emailed my doctor. He was out of town. So a fill-in doc sent me a form letter describing COVID-19 symptoms, and that was it. And so on the 11th, by that time it had hurt. My lungs hurt all the time. The 13th, I went into the ER. They did a whole workup on me, did a chest X-ray, all that fun stuff. The 13th, they gave me Tamiflu, they gave me Motrin, and an inhaler. And I only took the inhaler and the Motrin for like 16 hours, because every time I used it, my lungs hurt more and my symptoms developed stronger symptoms.
Interesting.
And so it's like it just lit a fire on everything.
Right.
So I felt terrible on the 13th to go into the emergency room. And then by the 16th, I honestly, to goodness, thought I might die from this thing.
Wow.
I went in, felt terrible. They ran the same battery of tests, little extra blood work. And then my ER doctor came back and said, so good news, bad news. Good news is you don't have the flu. Bad news is we're pretty much 100% positive you have the COVID-19. But we can't give it to you because you're not dying. So we have to save our tests for the dying so we know how to save them if that's what they have. So what they had done is they processed of elimination anything it could possibly be in terms of breathing, pulmonary problems, heart problems.
Yeah.
Any sort of scenario, situation, pneumonia. My lungs look great. There was no issues. So they had the CDC on the phone and the infectious disease doctors that they had there at the hospital. And they were pretty confident that I had it. And the doctor said, we're 100% sure. Mm-hmm. But there's that little bit because we can't, quote unquote, give you a test.
Yeah. But you have the classic sign, all those symptoms, especially the headache and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still bothersome to me because they're still describing it as like a flu. And I had just gotten over the flu Super Bowl week.
Okay.
And I had gone through a round of Tamiflu, and this flu knocked me down.
Right.
I was very sick, even on the Tamiflu. And it's funny because a lot of people that had the flu in early February have also gotten the COVID-19. So it's just a weird happenstance that, a lot that I've spoken to on Twitter have gotten symptoms of COVID-19, either diagnosed or their primary care said, well, we think you got it, but there's no test. So, much like the ER doc has told me, a lot of primary care physicians across the country and the world have told people, hey, you're stable. We feel comfortable sending you home. Now your body has to fight it.
Yeah. Well, in that time, in those first, 2 weeks, how was your blood sugar? Like, how was
all
that?
Over the place?
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I should have paid attention to, because before the 4th, for a couple of weeks before that, my blood sugars were so high. I would spike during the day and then I'd crash at night. Spike during the day, crash at night. I wasn't even for 2.5 weeks. And generally when I get sick, but I have symptoms, that's what happens to me is I get high.
Right.
But I was feeling terrific, other than I thought it was allergies, but I was feeling fine. But my blood sugars were just all over the place.
Gotcha. Just for context, how often do you test finger stick?
Generally about 5 times a day.
All right. And so you were seeing spikes that were significantly.
I was in the 350, 400 range. And that doesn't happen, especially in like a lot of days I give myself a shot upon eating, and it was like I gave myself nothing.
Okay. The food went in and just acted like there was no insulin in there at all.
Yeah, 100%. It's like my body wasn't accepting the insulin at all.
Yeah.
I'm back to being normal now.
Okay.
But in the 29 days and like a couple weeks lead up, so we're talking almost 40 some odd days here, my blood sugars were just boom. Through the roof.
Were you conscious of the effects of high blood sugars and bouncing around, or were you so sick you couldn't feel them?
While I was sick, I couldn't really feel them because generally I get thirsty or I get a little tired. But while I was in like the meat of the sickness, if you will, I couldn't really feel being high, being low at all.
Gotcha.
So
it's crazy, dude. That's insane.
It truly is.
Yeah.
This virus is insidious, man. It's the strangest thing because it's completely different to so many people. While a group of people will have the same symptoms, a completely different group is going to die within days.
Yeah.
And another completely different group is going to be asymptomatic and be a carrier for it. It makes no sense.
Well, as you're talking, I'm just reflecting back a week ago. It's been up on the podcast. You can go listen to it. There's an not an ER nurse. There's a nurse from New York City who has type 1 who's had it, but she had it so mild that she just talked about, headaches a little bit. It wasn't as bad as it wasn't good, but it wasn't as bad. And, her
even my family
completely different than yours.
Oh, well, 100%.
Yeah.
And even my family, while we've been quarantined and I was suffering from this thing, there was about a 16-hour window of weirdness where my 17-year-old got sick, my 9-year-old got sick, and my wife had chest pains for about 16 hours. And it all came and went throughout their body. And they were done with it.
And you do wonder if they didn't just have it, but they dealt with it or they were more asymptomatic, right?
Yeah, because, if they were just walking around going to school, they more than likely had it. And they've been giving it to everybody else if they were still in school, which we haven't been for like 3 weeks now.
Yeah, but not only that, when you obviously were infected at whatever point, it was so early in the process. Nobody was cognizant of that. You were living in your house and washing dishes and touching things. And if you
100%. man. I was still going to malls, buying shoes for the kids. I was going to Target. I was, doing what people do. We were slowly starting to try to expose ourselves less, because I've been following this thing since December, January.
Yeah.
And with the Chinese reaction and just seeing the videos that were escaping from there, and just the overall feeling of it. And so I'd been talking to my wife about it, because I'm medically trained, and so stuff like this interests me. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to my wife about it. I said, we got to be prepared for this. If this thing gets over here, it's going to explode like wildfire.
Yeah.
And she was like, all right, honey. Because, that's what wives do.
Yeah. And there he goes thinking he knows something again.
There he goes again. And so
Justin and his thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. All these conspiracy theories, weirdo.
Well, my wife has a biology degree and works in the pharma field. And she was telling me real early on, she's like, hey, at some point, everyone in the world is going to have had that virus.
Yep.
And I was like, what? Yep. She goes, everyone's going to get it. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, sunshine.
Yeah, thanks, honey. Love you too. Have a great day at work.
She's 100% right. She just.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I told my wife, and this was before Seattle. I said, God, if this comes here, we are so unprepared. Mm-hmm. There's so many people out walking around, and nobody even knows about this thing.
Yeah.
All it takes is one guy that was here, 2 months ago.
Somebody to come through China and before anybody knew it, and that's that. Yeah. Well,
and not to be a Trumpster and cheerlead Trump, but you gotta think that the government knew something was up, because when did Trump cancel flights from China? It was early January, wasn't it?
And you're wondering now how much that had to do with. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll look. Hold on.
Yeah. So and this was 2 months before it came to America. So Seattle had it first, and then some weirdness started happening in Italy. And then at the same time, California, but it was so light that, nobody was really paying attention. So when I finally got it, I was in front of the wave.
Hey, obviously you would know, because this has been your whole life for a month, but I'm looking at a Bloomberg report here. Commercial flight cancellations due to, they called it SARS-CoV-2, began in January.
SARS-CoV-2. Yeah, at the very beginning. That's what the name was.
Right. Began in January and were limited primarily in the beginning to Wuhan. Oh, look at this. Yeah, no kidding. So they were talking about it. They were like, this is bad. We need to get ahead of this. Right. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. But, how modern day society is. I mean, we have so much information at our fingertips, but most of the people just kind of, sparingly look at it and just kind of,
Hey, I was just remembering yesterday, I was talking to my son, because the week of that ended, I think, with the 13th in March. I forget what week that was exactly. I should find a calendar so I could say. But I was in Florida with my son. He was playing baseball. And so it was becoming clear, on the 11th of March, a Wednesday, they were telling the kids that the baseball season, because this was for college, was going to be suspended.
Sure.
The NCAA was going to suspend the season. By the 12th, they were starting to talk about canceling it. And on the 13th, as we were getting ready to leave, I mean, I'm saying to my son, we got to get home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a woman next to me, and she says, hey, they're going to extend the kids' spring break a week, because they play baseball down in Florida during their spring break, right? And she goes, do you think the kids will be back? I said, I don't think they're ever going back. And she's like, what? I'm like, I said, are you not paying attention to this?
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. And it was just not on her radar, not a big news junkie to her. Some guy in, as much as she knew about it, somebody in China ate a bat. That's what she thought.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And now, by the way, do we know it's a disease in a bat that transferred to what are they?
From my understanding, and a lot of the information I get is from, I can't remember the guy's name right off the top of my head, but from my understanding, the bat thing is taken off. But from my understanding, it came from A pangolin, yes.
Right.
It came from a pangolin and then transferred to human. And generally, the pangolin is endemic with coronavirus. But it has never jumped from pangolin to human before. And that's what made this so unique. And then at the same time, it's a retrovirus. So it doesn't replicate itself. It needs to take a healthy cell, take over that cell, and make that cell make more virus. So the cell's not making or splitting or doing anything that cell is supposed to do, like a lung cell, but it infects it and then makes more virus that way. So it's like a zombie virus. It doesn't procreate on its own. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's a great video I'll put it on up on Facebook so people can see it. But there's just this really wonderful video that explains how it works, like how it takes over a healthy cell and destroys it and moves on, and this it's really crazy. Yeah, so Science Daily said they're blah, blah, I'm trying to find it here.
Well, I know that that's why a lot of the people when they're sick, because when your lungs get infected with something, your body makes a response, and generally with that response, you get swelling, you get inflammation, you get something.
Yeah.
And what the mucus inside your lungs is trying to do is corral that virus, and then it drops at the bottom of your lungs, and then you.
Oop, Justin, hold on one second. Justin, I lost you. You're back. I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. You were talking about, you said mucus, and then I lost you for 20 seconds or so.
Okay, no problem. I was you were.
I was going to.
You were looking something up, so I was just filling air.
No, I enjoyed what you were saying. I literally I didn't hear you for like 20 seconds.
Oh
yeah.
Oh no. Okay. What I think what I was saying was that in immune response, your body causes inflammation, and in your lungs and your mucous membranes, it causes mucus to appear. That way, the virus can't get to your vital body parts, and so in your lungs it drops down, and then you expel it by coughing it up.
Yeah.
And so, where most people, it's a dry cough, because that's what I had the entire time, a complete dry cough. What this virus supposedly does is it gets into the air sac, the alveoli, and it hardens them. So it's not like a liquid mucus; it's a thick sludge, and it gets in these air sacs and it hardens them. So it doesn't it can't be expelled. So that, because everything's dry, there's no phlegm, and so that's what I've read. And the people that are intubated, from my understanding, there's no liquid in their lungs. It's because their air sacs are concrete, and you can't get any air into the air sacs in your lungs.
So the intubation is to keep you alive until hopefully the virus passes through you.
They're hoping to God, and that's why they gave me the prednisone. They gave it to me for about 5 days, and it was just long enough to knock down the immune response, so I could have some comfort in breathing. And it took about 3 days before I could breathe without pain while my lungs still hurt. But through the whole process, everything was dry. There was never a rattle. There was never anything in my lungs.
Well, before we move on, I'm on ScienceDaily.com, and there's just one sentence here that's pertinent to what we were saying. Is most experts agree that bats are a natural reservoir for SARS-CoV-2. But an intermediate host was needed for it to jump from bats to humans. So it couldn't get from bats to humans. And they were starting to think it was snakes, but now they really believe it was the pangolins. The
pangolin, yeah. That's what I read late February, early March.
Right.
I mean, before I started having symptoms, I read that and watched a video on YouTube about that, and I thought, oh God, this is gonna be bad. Yeah. And then that's when they started doing they started canceling things, and then kind of quarantining, then really quarantining. So,
yeah. Well, and it's so hard to, like, how would you, I mean, I guess you could, but how do you just go to a nation? Look, I know you don't see any sick people yet, but get in your damn houses. You know what I mean?
Please, please, God, get in your houses.
Get inside.
I don't know how we got anybody to comply with that. because I was on the fence, honestly, myself. I was like, gosh, I don't know. And then I got it, and I was like, oh, this is real. And
everybody
that was
inside.
the whole. Yeah, exactly. Don't look. Go back. Turn around.
So quite seriously, this is not like, obviously some people can get it more mildly, like Sarah who was on the show, but yours is really only a moderate, and what you describe is terrible.
Oh, it's awful, and it's solid. Like from the time you start showing symptoms until about the day before you stop having symptoms, it's a solid headache. It's a solid lung pain.
So
the
like
inhaling.
When you're normal, when you get sick normally, there's good and bad times. Like you start feeling worse at night, but you get up in the day and you feel a little better once you get moving. None of that was happening. You were at one level of.
I was one level, but as with every sickness, you're always worse in the morning and at night.
Okay. That still held true.
Yeah, that still held true. But everything else it's solid. Like there's no relief whatsoever.
That's something. Now, have you been inside long enough and past the point of being contagious yet, like for your family? Like how you got 3 kids and a wife and you're in an apartment. How are you guys handling that?
Actually, this is great. This is like everybody's this is everybody's wish. Not going to school, being home and playing video games all day, and sitting down and watching movies. So it's like this is like a vacation.
But nobody freaked out. Like your kids didn't look at you for a little while. Like, yo, you stay over there, or was there?
No, because I've always been pretty open with my kids about what things mean. Because with kids are curious. So if you give them just enough information to pique their curiosity and to settle it down, then they're okay. You start getting into the nitty-gritty details, and that's when you freak kids out. So I've always been fairly honest with my kids. So we had talked about it. I talked about it with my wife. And then when I got it, it became real. They were scared. But, the kids felt I would pull through, and nobody freaked out. Nobody cried. If we did, it was away from the kids. And I'd talk to my wife in private moments. And I had a couple down days where, like I said, there was twice I felt like I'd die. And then one day, like the gravity of the situation was just too much for me.
Okay.
And
emotionally, it got a hold of you emotionally.
Oh, well, 100%, 100%. Like I think I cried the entire day. Because I felt so terrible, and because it's heavy. It's really freaking heavy. Yeah. This thing is like killing people, and I have it. And it's just, it got hard.
Were you able to avoid news coverage of it during the month, or were you able to look?
We've been hit or miss with the news. I've done a lot of media. And I haven't really seeked it out after I've done it. And we'll watch the news just to see what's going on, but we've kind of stopped because, especially when a lot of people started dying and I was really in the midst of it.
Yeah.
That was a little tough to take. That hit a little too close to home. So probably about the 17th or 18th, we just stopped watching the news and being curious about it, and just we've kept to movies for the most part.
No, I mean I'm just wondering if you were even like considering like just avoiding it altogether, like just not wanting to hear about it at all.
No, because I still want to know what's happening. Like I said, I'm kind of a news junkie, and I like information, I like knowledge. But the coverage is just wall to wall. You can't escape it. So, even when you're trying to watch the weather for the news, somehow coronavirus gets put in there for the weather. So it's just one of those things where it is what it is. Everybody's curious. And that's why the Twitter post took off the way it did, because people were just curious, because everything has just been CDC guidelines and, official statements, and that doesn't really put a personal spin on it, a personal take.
Right.
And so people just had questions, and I even said that. I was like, hey, you know what? if somebody else had this, I'd have questions too. So here we go.
So you're answering the questions. Well, and a Google search. So first of all, prior to having coronavirus, how many Twitter followers did you have?
It's 50.
So you were just a dad on Twitter. Like every once in a while you'd pick it up and be like, come on, hit the ball. Like stuff like that on Twitter.
100%. It was like, hey, this is kind of cool. But mostly what I did, honestly, is I'd troll the local news stations, and I post GIFs on whatever they would post. And I would make them laugh. And so basically I was like a troll. I'd go have fun on Twitter and I'd log off of it. And I had like a small little community of A's fans that kind of got to know me, and I got to know them, and that was it. And probably the other half of my followers of the 50 I'm not kidding, were bots, because it would be like John 1785262733355, and I'm like, oh, okay. His name is John, but it's like a picture of a naked chick and says, "I love you long time." It was one of those.
Basically
things.
Had 25 real followers, and I'm looking right now. You have 9,727 followers right now.
It's crazy,
and that really is from saying out loud, "I have coronavirus."
That's all that was.
Wow.
Was I have coronavirus, and it got up to. I think it got up to 11,000 at one point. I remember 10,300, and now it's gone down because
they figured out you're going to start talking about sending out gifts to your.
Yeah, I'll start sending out gifts again and just having fun. But now I'm trying to do something positive with this momentum.
Yeah,
and help and still try to get the word out, because. For a lot of people, like I had Corona and now I'm better, and that's the end of the story for them. But there's so many people that are just now getting it, and I still get hundreds of questions and thousands of responses.
Oh yeah, brother,
per post.
You were early on, man. This is just happening now. You just happened.
Oh, yeah.
You were out in front. You were wearing that. You were wearing the high-waisted jeans before other people knew about it. That's all.
Oh yeah, dude. I exactly. I had the zoot suit before it was cool.
Yeah, now everyone knows. Now listen, I just saw. I didn't realize this. When baseball season starts up, are you going to throw out the opening day pitch for the A's?
That's the opening day. That's what's happening.
All right, listen. I'm going to ask a serious question. All the pain you went through for a month, does it seem like a fair trade to throw out opening day first pitch?
I'm going to be treated like royalty that day, so you're damn right. It's going to be awesome.
That is very, very cool. Like I don't know that I would trade for coronavirus for it, but if you had to have it, that's a nice little payday at the end.
It was a nice little thing, and that was really cool. Like that was Dave Kaval or however you want to say it.
The president of the A's.
The president of the A's.
Yeah.
He messaged me. Like, I didn't search him out. He messaged me at like midnight.
Right.
and I was blown away. I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to my kids at night, because we have this like family group chat thing. Mm-hmm. And my wife saw it because obviously she was worried about me, because I had to go up and go to the bathroom. And so she goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. That's amazing." And then the next day, the kids wake up and they don't even look at the family chat. My son sees it in ESPN as soon as he woke up. He goes, fun. "Dad, you're on ESPN." I was like, "Shut up." So he comes in and shows me. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm on ESPN."
That's so cool. Well, listen, they got nothing else to talk about. There's no baseball to talk about. They have to fill the time.
They got to do
with
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very, very cool. I'll tell you, I reached out to you very late at night, and I'll tell you a little inside baseball secret about podcasts. If I reach out to somebody I'm interested in having on publicly, I have a number of podcasts who will then go, "Oh, Scott's trying to get that person." Then they try to get it, right? So I tweeted at you. For me, it was like 3:00 in the morning. I saw you on, and I was so I tweeted at you. You tweeted back, and then I said, "DM me." And then I went back and deleted my tweet so nobody could see. And
man, the podcasting business is cutthroat.
It's cutthroat, and I felt the entire time I was doing it, I was like, "This is ridiculous. I am an adult," Absolutely the silliest thing in the world, but I didn't want anybody else to get you, so I was like, I'm going to get him first.
I'm going to get him first. Well, I did have, there was, God, on that initial post, there was, I think the total number is about 17 million people have read that post.
Wow.
Because you know how you get your own personal analytics, not just the likes or the retweets.
Yeah.
And so 17 million people read that thing. And so it was, at one point, it was impossible to keep. It was hard to keep up with just 50 people anytime anybody would respond, because I'd get like 10 or 15 responses, and it would just kind of be all over the place, and you got to find them, and all that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And so with millions of people interacting with one thing, I was lost. So I'd go back periodically and scroll through, and like there was like, hey, can we talk to you? Hey, can we talk to you? Hey, can we talk to you? It's like, follow me. Yeah, follow me and then DM me. It's so much easier, you weirdos.
I saw the other day someone tweeted at you and asked you to come on this podcast, and we had already been set up, and you answered the person like, I think I'm scheduled to do that. Like, it was really, you're like, look, I don't 100% know, but I think I recognize what you're saying to me, which
that's
is
right.
really
that's
amazing. Right. And so you really do, you want to do something with this. I think that, I should end this by asking you, I don't usually ask simple questions like this. It seems so, just elementary, but do you have a message for people who don't have it or do have it? Or, say what you want to say to people.
My message has been the same from the very first day somebody asked to talk to me. And the message has been, heed the warnings the government's telling you. They're not taking your liberty. It's not a conspiracy theory. They're not trying to tank the economy on purpose. Believe me, there's one person on this planet that wants to tank the economy less than Donald Trump. Yeah. he wants it going. He wants to be reelected. Yeah. So if he had his wishes, everybody would be at work.
Right.
And same thing with Gavin Newsom here in California. The last thing in the world he wants to do is have California be in another recession, because we just kind of got out of the 2008 deal. Mm-hmm. And so my message has always been, heed the warning. They're doing it to protect you, and more importantly, the people around you.
Yeah,
Everyone else. Because while you might be young and healthy and a marathon runner, and you take care of yourself, you might be like a vector for it, like a mosquito. You might carry the disease to your parents, to your grandparents, and then they get sick because grandpa has COPD. It's not about your health and your liberty and the government telling you what to do. No, it's about other people's health and trying to save them as well as you. Because I just read some 20-year-old kid died just yesterday.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you. I was listening to Dr. Peter, I think it's Haltz. I'm not 100% sure how he says his last name, but he was talking today about a lot of the data we have about it not affecting younger people. That data is
wrong.
It's from China. And that, believe it or not, you might not think about this, but people, of Chinese descent have different makeups than 100%. Other people do too. So as it moves across the globe, it's going to affect different people differently.
There was a quick study done of data. So it was a fairly small data set of about 700 to 900 cases. And it went through all the blood types. O, A, B, A, negative, positive, all that stuff. And there's more people affected that have type A blood than the rest. Now, just because something is happening doesn't mean that's the reason.
Right.
But more people that have gotten the disease and have been royally sick or have died have had type A blood. Yeah, and I happen to be A positive with my blood. And it
got a hold of you pretty good.
It got a hold of me really well. Yeah. And I think my kids are O. My wife is O. And so, and it just barely went through them. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence on this thing that makes it just an insidious thing.
Do you remember when you were a kid and you first learned that there are microscopic bugs living on your skin? And you know what I mean? You were like freaked out, and then you realize it's just how my body works. It's not a big deal.
My wife was an adult when I told her that there's microscopic bugs on your eyelashes. You should have seen her face turn green when I told her that.
Well, my point is that there's processes happening constantly in your body, in the world, that go unseen. So for every person who gets some sort of a virus and you never realize it, you maybe could look back a week later and say, I didn't feel great Tuesday and Wednesday, but it didn't slow you down that very much. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the world that's unseen all the time. This just happens to be something that we can see. And like you said, not in everybody. And so, but the worst cases, the more extreme situations, I think, listen, for me, I think it dictates staying indoors and distancing yourself very seriously,
Yeah. And I've been doing everything I can. And that's why I agreed to this. Well, that's the whole reason why I decided to post anyway, because I just did it for friends and family, because I had friends and family.
Well, yeah, you weren't talking to anybody except 25
I wasn't
people.
talking to anybody. Yeah, exactly. I think the most interactions I ever had on Twitter was 30 people. And that was a huge thing. I was like, oh my God, I had 30 people look at this.
Justin, you live in an apartment. You could have opened your window in that apartment complex and yelled and probably reached more people than your Twitter was going to get.
Way more people. Shut up.
How long did it take? What happened? About the tweet, because it occurs to me that the tweet is not dissimilar to the virus. It went to 25 people, and before you know it, there are 17 million people seeing it. How did it work? Was it a retweet? Can you see the genesis of it?
From when I got out of the emergency room, and we went to the car, and her and I talked about it, and I said, you know what, I think I want to put this on social media. And she's like, I don't want you to, because it's kind of like it's our privacy. I don't want anybody to know our dirty laundry,
right?
For lack of a better term. And I was like, I don't know. It's pretty serious. I know of people just had conversation with, oh, F it, I'm going to the bar.
Yeah, they're not taking it seriously.
And yeah, and the day prior, and I was like, you know what? No, I want to make this real for people. So friends and family, I'm going to let them know. Boom, sent it off. When I got home about an hour later, we drove across town to the back home.
Yeah.
2,200 people had retweeted the tweet. And I looked at my wife and I went, I'm really sorry. She goes, why? I said, 2,200 people have retweeted this. And she goes, oh my God, you're kidding me. And I'm like, no, I'm really sorry. So I don't know, a couple hours later, we went to bed. It was 9:00. 690,000 people had read the tweet. Jeez. And then by the time I woke up, it was 1.1 million. And now I think it's at 17 or something along those lines.
Do you remember what you wrote?
It was, don't be a moron. I've got the disease. This is real. Don't sleep on it. Stay inside or something like that. And with my picture with my mask on in the ER bed, and sent it, and didn't even think about it again. And when I got home, I was like, this was just for people to, people close to me. I can't believe what's happened here. Yeah. And that was at 2,000 people.
Wow. Dude, that's crazy. It's not unexpected. It's just, it's insane.
It's weird because, it's weird too, because I was the first. I was the first, and what everybody has said, they were like, yeah, we hear what the news is saying, we hear what the government's saying, but it's not real. You made it real to me. Okay. We look forward to hearing from you because you've made us less scared. I only downloaded Twitter because I wanted to follow you. And I was like, what? What are you talking about?
I'm your pathway to Twitter? Okay.
Well,
because now they're hoping to follow along. Well, listen, I can tell you that putting up an episode with somebody who had type 1 and had a mild strain of it made people comfortable. But it's because they decide to take from it, oh, look, it's mild. It's just going to be mild. And that's just one person. So, I'm excited to have you on. I know it sounds crazy, but because you had a more severe case, because they can see, look, it could happen to somebody else and in a different way. And I think it's important for them to understand, listen, there's a lot of good that would come from comfort during this time. And I definitely don't want people to be anxious and scared, but they also shouldn't be ill-informed.
100%.
You know, that just makes sense to me. So
100%. Yeah. And, that was the whole genesis of it. That's the whole reason why I tweeted it. And then it became some sort of like, I'm their voice now. And then it became, well, now this became a priority in my life. And then it became like a responsibility.
Yeah.
And so, while, it also helped me keep my mind off of what I was going through. So I would spend hours on Twitter just reading and liking and responding and retweeting things and keeping my mind busy on something other than my suffering, I guess.
Yeah, it gave you something to do.
Yeah, it did. It gave me something to do. And even people on Twitter were like, and what's crazy through this whole thing, we know how vicious Twitter can be, but just about 100%, I'm talking like 99.5%, everything has been positive. I can probably count on two hands the amount of negative tweets that I have read, or have come across. So
a lot of first world complaining has stopped in the last few weeks.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's so funny. Even to this day, I'll hear people go, "Oh, but my cake was ruined." It's like, he didn't put the right frosting on. And I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me.
Listen, lady, I was a foster kid. I got type 1 diabetes, and now I got this COVID-19 thing. I don't want to hear about your baking mishap ever again.
That's right. I don't care what it says on your cake. Just eat it and be happy.
Do you have, where would you, I know you said you feel like you're in the recovery mode now. Like, how is it living now? Like, are you able to move around? If you could go to work, would you be able to?
Oh, 100%. I think I'd be able to. The shortness of breath probably stopped 2, maybe 3 days ago.
Okay.
And I can move around. If I do too much, once you start feeling normal, you're like, I can do normal things. Mm-hmm. But, it knocks me back a little bit, but not even as close to where I was a week ago.
And the headache's gone?
The headache is finally gone. Yeah. That took a solid 24, 25 days to go away.
Right. Wow. I'm incredibly happy for you that you've made it through it. It's amazing, especially, when you look at, I'm looking at the numbers while I'm talking to you, and, there's almost 1.2 million confirmed cases across the globe. Almost 250,000 people have recovered, but we're up on close to 65,000 deaths at this point. And
you want to know what's crazy is I'm not in those statistics because I was never given a test.
You weren't tested.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. I was talking to a doctor on the show the other day, and he said the same thing. He's like, these numbers are just...
The numbers are whack. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. They and even the ER doctors and everybody knew at the time, and I also knew that. If you don't get tested, you're not counted. Mm-hmm. And so...
I've had no symptoms, but the other day I had a fever for like 6 hours. Who's to say I don't have it? And that's just all that's ever going to happen.
That's all that's ever going to happen. And you were just the carrier, and you gave it to your kid or your wife, and your wife then gave it to somebody at the store.
Right. Well, we all been hunkered down for quite some time at this point. So, but I have been the, I'm the schmuck that gets to go out to, get groceries. So, but I come back in like Breaking Bad, you know what I mean? So I'm taking care of myself, I feel like. But I guess it really only takes not wiping off one thing the right way or something, that's just got to be the thing, and you're stuck. Oh my God. So you're not contagious anymore?
From my understanding, even the ER said 4 to 14 days. So I have been going with what I read at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Was up to 21 days. So I'm going to, because by what the doctor said, sit 2 weeks and you should be done. Don't worry about it. But I'm going to go with what I read, because so far it's been about 100%. It's got a great batting average. And I wish I would have saved that freaking article. But up to 3 weeks after the last of my symptoms, I could still be contagious. So I'm going to go another 3 weeks after, I don't know, 3 days ago.
Yeah, oh, well, hey, listen, that's very good of you. You're a good citizen, man. That's excellent. Seriously.
Well, I'm one of those people that if my kids get sick, I keep them home, and the school hates it, and we get letters, but I'm like, I'm not going to send my kids to school sick, because I'm not going to have my kids get other kids sick, and then now you have 5 kids out of school instead of just mine.
Yeah, right. It just doesn't make sense to.
No.
Out of, especially there's nothing to do, man. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I think is going to be great with this? And I hope we have a long memory with this, and it changes companies and schools, because the school's like, well, if your kid's sick, keep them home. Well, when you do that, then they're like, but you've kept your kid home for too long. But you don't understand. You don't want them there when they have the flu or cold-like symptoms, because then you know. And then the same thing is with employment and jobs and your boss. You have to go through the whole rigmarole of showing up, looking like you're sick, and being sent home. I hope with this, it changes our mindset. Hey, if you're sick, just stay the F home. Yeah. Don't even put on the dog and pony show of even coming in. Stay home.
Oh, I think the next number of years are going to be super interesting for how things adjust. And I'm sure they're not going to go crazy. I mean, you can look back. There's been other things like this, but we've never shut the country down for them.
No,
so
never.
It's going to be something to see. It really will be. Dude, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. Thank you very much.
Hey, no problem. I've got no issue doing it. If you want to have me again, maybe we'll have a catch-up show a couple months down the road and see how I'm feeling, if there's any link, because that's the other thing I'm worried about. I'm worried about some sort of lung damage or pulmonary damage or heart damage, because I've been that's starting to be leaking out now. So
yeah, no, I'd be super interested to follow up with you. And I also, at some point you and I need to get comfortable enough together where I can talk you into getting to a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor too.
Because nice. Okay.
I would love to see, I would have been so incredibly interested to see CGM data from while you were sick. I just think that would have been crazy. And it would have been.
Well, I can go through my machine and show you that there's so many high blood sugars.
Yeah. No, I believe you, dude. I mean, listen, illness hits some people really hard with their blood sugar. So I 100% believe you. All right. Justin, seriously, I really appreciate this. Would you like to follow Justin on Twitter? He's JWDaddy80. JWDaddy80. Thanks so much to Justin for coming on the show and being so clear and thoughtful and thorough about his Corona experience. Thanks also to Dexcom, Omnipod, the Contour X1 blood glucose meter, and Touched by Type 1 for sponsoring the show. Go to dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more about the G6 continuous glucose monitor. And of course, to get that free no obligation demo of the Omnipod, you want myomnipod.com/juicebox. Those links are also available at juiceboxpodcast.com and right there in the podcast player that you're listening to now. There will be one more episode this week. Thursday, I'm guessing. Friday? Thursday or Friday? I don't know. I'll give it to you when I give it to you. Just relax. They're free. If you're that bored and you need another episode, what I do is go to contournext1.com and see if you're eligible for a free meter. That meter is rockin'. I'll tell you about it in the next episode. Or at the very least, you should head over to touchedbytype1.org to see beautiful people doing amazing things for those living with type 1 diabetes. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast today. If you have, and I mean, if you've really, really enjoyed it, you probably should head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review with some really thoughtful words that other people could see and think, I should try that podcast because Jimmy said it's amazing. And you don't just say it's amazing 5 stars. You say something thoughtful. You'll see the other reviews. You figure out what to do. Seriously, the reviews really help other people find the show, which I appreciate. But in the end, the thing you can do that will help this podcast the most is share it with someone else who you think will enjoy it. If you did that, that would be enough. It would be more than enough. It might make me cry. If you're interested in more Corona-related episodes, Episode 314 is with Dr. Adam Nadelman. He sets out the basics about corona. In episode 315, Jenny Smith, CDE and person living with type 1 diabetes, talks about corona as it pertains to people with type 1. In episode 318, Sarah is a nurse from New York City who has type 1 diabetes, had corona, and works in the hospitals that you're hearing so much about on the news. And then again on episode 320, Dr. Nadelman returns to talk about how things have shifted since his first appearance. It had only been 3 weeks since he had been on the show, but a lot had changed. So we were trying to keep things updated. I hope you guys are all being safe, covering your coughs, washing your hands, staying indoors, and following all of the guidelines that are going to help all of us return back to normal life very soon. Be well.